when you get close to WrestleMania, you do whatever you have to get the biggest stars on your show. We're just days away. And I decided, let's go with the biggest star that I could find. And despite the fact that I'm very sick today, in the wrestling business, that doesn't take you down. That doesn't get you down. It takes you up. Ladies and gentlemen, today, right here, coming out of BTT Studios, right here on The Last Word, right here behind the turnbuckle, we have the one and only, the internet champion, Matt Cardona. And there he is right now. Matt,
Yeah.
It's great to see you again. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing great, Coach. Thanks for having me.
It's awesome. We got a lot to talk about, and
Let's
I
go,
appreciate
baby.
you. I appreciate you getting up early today. You recently got back from Australia,
Yes.
which is amazing. How was that trip, first and foremost?
Well, I won the World Series Wrestling World Title in Australia. No, but seriously, I love going overseas because the fans they're so rabid, they're so hungry, they're so excited to see wrestling because they only get the stars that they see on television a couple times a year, if that. So every time I go to Australia, the fans are awesome. And they love meeting me. They love spending money on autographs, T-shirts. So I make more money at the merch table than I do on the shows.
And
Great.
that's kind of where I wanted to start because I call you the most unique superstar maybe in the history of wrestling.
Oh wow.
That you spend over. I believe that because you spent well over a decade in the WWE, just like I did. But then you leave and you become a bigger star now than you were then, in my opinion. What has that been like, and how were you able to embrace all the stuff that it takes? Like you said, the autographs, the merch, the tables, all of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So, when I got released from WWE, of course, it was a devastating blow, but it was like, okay, Zack Ryder is dead. But now, as crazy as it sounds, Matt Cardona, my real name, was born that day.
Wow.
And I knew, like, okay, like this isn't it. This is going to just be a new beginning. But it was a weird time because we were in the middle of that global pandemic, so there was like nowhere to go, nowhere to work. So I was just kind of like sitting by my pool, working out my backyard until the world opened back up. Luckily, I'm in Florida, so it was nice and nice and hot outside. But once the world opened back up, I just dove headfirst into the independent wrestling scene, wrestling anywhere I could, whether it be AEW, TNA, NWA, GCW. I didn't want to sign a contract anywhere. I wanted to be my own boss, wanted to make my own schedule because for a decade plus, I was in WWE, and listen, I am so grateful for my time there. It set me up for this independent run. If I didn't have a WWE run, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. I wouldn't have this
100%.
independent run.
Yeah.
Everything I learned from WWE, it translated to the independents, believe it or not. Just how to carry yourself, how to do interviews like this, how to sell merchandise, how to market yourself. But I realized on the independents that so many people were just focused on their matches and their moves. And I'm not saying have a bad match on purpose. That's not what I'm saying. But if you don't have a connection with the audience, if they don't love you or hate you, you have nothing. And now being on the independents, I wanted to be hated because my whole time, or the majority of my time in WWE, I was the babyface, the underdog, the good guy. But I needed to flip the script. And that's what I did. And that's why I think the Matt Cardona person, character, persona, whatever you want to call it, that's why I think it works so well in the independents.
So let me ask you this, because we were talking on the show about Cena's heel turn and how there's no doubt about it, is sacrificing merch dollars in order to do it. I've seen a million different videos of kids who are like, "You're not the guy that I
Yeah.
knew," and we all know that it's a work, but to a lot of fans out there, it's not. So when you wanted to be hated, how did you use that to still sell all the merch and all the autographs, despite being a heel?
See, I think on the independents, it's a lot smarter. Now, listen, there are certainly some independent shows that I do in like West Virginia, you know what I'm saying? Where it's still real to them, damn it, But I think now, if you're coming to these independent shows, like you know what's going on. You recognize the year 2025. You know it's a show, right? You're there to be entertained. So they come to my table beforehand, and I'm nice to them. I'm smiling, I'm shaking hands, I'm kissing babies. But when I walk through that curtain, middle fingers in your face. You know what I'm saying? I'll take a beer, I'll throw it in your face, and they love it. They just want to be entertained. This is entertainment. It's like a movie. It's a movie that never ends.
I wish more young talent could be that way. We've talked a lot here at BTT about starting master classes and teaching young broadcasters or young talent, the different nuances that go into whatever it is. And in the wrestling business, it's embracing what you're talking about, embracing being able to turn it on, turn it off, but then at the same time understanding that it's the revenue stream that you're trying to get to. So what was the time, or do you remember a night where you said, you know what, I can really make this not just get me to the next event, but really make some real coin?
So I had this death match on the independents in GCW. I don't know if you should definitely Google this one, coach. You'll enjoy it.
Okay.
It's myself versus this guy, Nick Gage. And this was the match. This is the match that started everything for me on the independents because for a year or so, I was just Matt Cardona. And even I didn't know who I was, right? Am I
Hmm.
just Zack Ryder with a different name? I didn't know. I knew I needed to change, but you can't just come out of the gate with a new character. You got to it has to evolve, at least in my
No doubt.
opinion. It has to be natural, you know? And I was approached by this company, GCW, to do this death match with Nick Gage. I said, okay. Well, first, my initial reaction was, hell no. I'm not wrestling this guy. He was just on Dark Side of the Ring at the time. He was a drug addict, criminal, almost killing David Arquette in a match. I'm like, I'm not wrestling this guy. And then I took a step back and realized, wait a minute, I have to wrestle this guy because everybody is going to be watching this. And if they're not watching it, they're going to be talking about it.
Uh-huh.
Right. So
Uh-huh.
that night, an independent wrestling show in Atlantic City, New Jersey, because of social media and streaming and how the world is now, that trended number one online over the Olympics and a UFC event that night. Just Matt Cordova's Nick Gage, right? Because people wanted to tune in. And if they weren't tuned in, like I said, they were talking about it or resharing the clips of me getting carved up with a pizza cutter. Anyway, I was bloody. I was a bloody mess. I wore a white t-shirt that night. I could wear like a street clothes, street fight type of feel. And I knew the white shirt would get like a couple trickles of blood on it. I'm like, it's this death match. It'll be cool, right?
Yeah.
This white shirt turned maroon. I'm like, okay. And then after I win the match, the fans are throwing garbage in the ring. Like it became like a pretty cool like moment that was spread on social media. We gotta do something with this shirt. Now, to go back to my WWE days, I remember WWE, like after WrestleMania, they would cut up that WrestleMania canvas and turn it into a nice plaque with an autograph and they'd
Right.
sell it on the shop. I contacted that company. I explained to them what I wanted to do. I sent them the bloody shirt. I said, please wear gloves. It's real blood, it's a bloody shirt. And we turned it into like 200, 250 plaques. I made over $20,000 on a t-shirt,
What?
essentially,
Like
you
just
know,
little like squares.
a little square. I can put a picture. I
Oh
can send you
my
a picture. A little
God.
square with an 8x10 of me wearing that shirt, all bloody, autographed. I'm like, okay, like I need to use what I learned in WWE and use it here on the independents because nobody's doing it at that level. People are selling T-shirts and stickers, little trading cards, but nobody's doing what WWE taught me how to do.
It's amazing that you mentioned that because so many people, and I went to ESPN for a decade, and then I'm
Sure.
there are all these different places, and you get there, and people go, "Oh, aren't you pissed off that?" And I left WWE. I didn't get
Yeah.
fired. Now
Right.
in COVID, I got that call from Michael Cole because he was like, "Hey, everybody that's not
Sure.
vital, just like Kenny, you did." But it's one of those situations where you can embrace or you can say, and I've done this in many interviews myself. I say this is what WWE gave to me instead of
Right.
being pissed off or
Sure.
Vince bounced checks or whatever he did to me, which did happen. Um, Instead saying this is what I learned. So it's really cool to hear you say that because so many guys would be sitting around saying, "Nope, they fired me. I didn't learn anything despite 14 years."
And I'm a fan of this business, so I've seen those bitter guys my whole life.
Right,
And
right,
I knew
right.
I just didn't want to be one of those guys. I didn't want to live like that. And I wanted to turn a negative into a positive, as cliche as that sounds. Like WWE was like my developmental. It set me up for this independent run, this whole professional wrestling run. And like I've said this in a million interviews too, but I'll say it again because it's true. Like I don't care how you define success, accolades, money, happiness. Post WWE, this independent run is the most successful I've been in my pro wrestling career.
Hmm. When you look at that, because right now you have millions of followers on the all the social media platforms, and I think what happened when social media started was every wrestling fan went through and followed everybody, and so a lot of them had like 400 or 500,000. You're like, who is this guy?
Right.
But you have grown exponentially the last 3 or 4 years. How have you used that social media following to your advantage?
Well, I recognize that this is a tool. This is free advertisement. I tell all these young independent stars, wrestlers, rising stars, they always ask me for advice. And I think they want me to like watch and critique their match. But I tell them, you got to get on social media. You
Yeah.
got to post like a million times a day because this is free advertisement, right? Like we have this tool to spread awareness to not just like the local show you're going to, but the whole world. And like, if Drew McIntyre doesn't want to tweet that weekend, that's okay because WWE will repost his stuff, Netflix will repost his stuff. Like, if I don't tweet, like, on to the next one.
Nobody.
And
Right.
in wrestling, it's like, what have you done for me lately? It's like out of sight, out of mind. So if I'm not on this 24/7, then like, it's like I don't exist. At least that's how I feel in my psycho brain.
Wrestling brains, we're all different, right?
Yeah.
We're all so scared about what's around that corner, and when's the next payday, and when is my next match, because of where you've gone to. What is When you get a call? What does your schedule look like? How does it work for you, being now that you probably turn down more shows than you can take?
Yeah, so I am my own boss, and I have a calendar, and I'm my own agent, if you want to call it that, right? I get an
Wow.
email or a call, and I look at the date. If it's free, I'll take it. Um, but yeah, I have to turn down a lot of stuff. There are certain things I turn down just because I have something else that day, or the best thing about being this free agent, this my own boss. If I want the weekend off, I don't have to work. You know?
Isn't that nice?
So
We never had that before. We never
right.
had that before.
And I'm not complaining about that. I was just used to that. That was my life. I got signed to WWE when I was 20 years old. I got fired when I'm like 35. So like a huge chunk, if not my whole adult life up to that point, was working for WWE. That's just how it was for me, you know? But now I get to control what I'm doing, what I'm not doing. That freedom. Oh my God. You
Does
can't
it
put
feel
a
like a
price on
weight
that.
was lifted off?
Yeah, and I didn't even know
Yeah.
there was a weight on me. You know what I'm saying?
Isn't that amazing?
It's just so
Isn't that
wild. It's
amazing?
wild.
So you started 2006. I started in 1999, and I was there. So we overlapped for 3 or 4 years. And I hope you can understand when I say this. I have severe PTSD about a lot of my time in WWE. I literally had Cody Rhodes. We were doing a DDP interview, and he walked into the interview. Just happened to come over to his house, and he's like, "Hey, Coach, you remember when we did X, Y, and Z?" I said, "Cody, you and I never worked together." He literally, they sent me the clip. I was in a pre-tape. I swear to God, I was in a pre-tape with Vince and with Cody Rhodes. Didn't even remember it. Didn't
Yeah.
even remember it. And it's so weird when people hear me say that. They're like, "Nah, you." I said, "No." There's a lot of it that I forget because maybe at the end I was so desperate to get out. What was it like for you at the end when COVID came? And describe that to people, because it was such a unique time in the business, and I don't think anybody knew what to do.
Yeah, so my situation is kind of pretty unique because the year prior, so 2019, now I can't say it's because AEW was starting, but
Mhm.
the majority of the roster was offered new deals, new 5-year
Mm,
deals for significantly more money. And
correct.
I didn't sign it because I only had a year or so left of my deal. I'm like, well, I don't know if I want to stay or go at this point because my roller coaster ride of a career. Listen, as grateful as I was for it, like, well, now there's somewhere else potentially to go.
Correct.
So I'm not going to sign this deal. Not that I said no, I'm not signing it, but like I didn't take that first offer or that second offer. Like I think I deserve a little more, because you're talking to the
100%.
boys, you hear what everyone else is making. I'm like, wait a minute,
Yeah.
so for about a year or so, we're negotiating. I'm going into talent relations every week and we're negotiating back and forth. And that was super stressful, right? Like I'm not saying we negotiate every single week, but every couple of weeks, every couple of months, we'd be sitting down talking about it. And man, I was just so anxious coming to work. Like, is this the day we're going to make the deal? Are we not going to make the deal? Anyway, then fast forward a year, I just get fired one day and like the decision was made for me. Like, well, not working here anymore. So like to me, it wasn't as devastating. Like for instance, my partner Brian Myers, who was Kurt Hawkins, he signed that deal. 5-year deal, just had another kid. He's got this family. He gets fired. That's a devastating blow. For me, it's like, all right, well, wasn't sure if I wanted to stay there anyway.
Right.
Well, not that I
Right.
didn't want to stay there. I just didn't know, like maybe there was a better avenue to go with my career because you only have one career, right? And like we're not getting younger.
No, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
People say all the time, "Coach, you still look like you're 25," but I am not 25 anymore. And I understand that. it's funny you bring up AEW because I think so many novice wrestling fans, they go, if you're pro WWE, you must hate AEW. If you're pro AEW, you must hate WWE. And the way we look at it, people that are OGs in the wrestling business, is that's more jobs for all of our friends. And it's more jobs for people to be able to participate in this business and grow. What did you make of, and what has AEW done for the wrestling business the last 5 years?
AEW has changed the business. I mean, in my opinion, right? I mean, just the amount of jobs it has created. I'm not even talking about just the wrestlers, and they have so many guys and girls under their contract, but like production people, camera people, doctors, trainers, ring announcers, merchandise people. All these people have jobs because they
It's
have
awesome.
AEW, and all these people at WWE are making way more money because AEW's them.
That's true.
You know?
It's true. That's how it works.
Yeah,
It's you get leverage, and there's
sure.
popular. Yeah, and then you even have the legends in WWE that are getting paid to not go over to AEW. I think
Right.
it's been a huge positive. But the other thing about it, and this is something that Vince, I don't believe Vince would ever have allowed, is going into business with the indie circuit, which is
Right.
exactly what the WWE has now done and AEW has now done. Are you surprised that we've gotten to the point where the two big companies recognize how valuable indie wrestling companies are?
I think it's a great time because it's given opportunities to people, even if they're just on a show for, one day. I saw like on NXT, they used somebody who was in their ID who I don't think has a real WWE contract, but just was on USA Network, right? Like wherever
Yeah,
NXT's on. That's a huge rub for somebody. But it's also so exciting because you never know who's going to show up where. That's what I think is so cool about the AEW and the WWE. People jumping ship back like it's the Monday Night Wars. It's fun again. It's fun to be a fan again. So I can understand if you're a fan of one over the other. I cannot understand if you want the other company to fail or you're like hate
I
tweeting.
know.
That I don't get. If you're a fan over one, sure. But to want the other to fail and wish bad things upon those wrestlers in that company, that I don't get.
It makes no sense to me.
Yeah,
It never has. It's one thing to be critical of a show, a match, whatever. We're critical of both, but we also praise both when
sure.
they're good. That's kind of our jobs. You are in a very unique situation. And on our show, at our brand, we talk about your better half a lot because
Yes.
she has embraced social media better than anybody else at WWE ever has. For people who don't know, that's Chelsea Green. And I refuse. If I didn't have a cold, I would do the whole introduction, but I would sound awful. What has it been like, first and foremost, to have a partner who embraces, at least it looks like from the outside, all of the ideas of how to push yourself out, despite the fact she is in the WWE?
Well, she when we first started dating, WWE wanted nothing to do with her. She had done Tough Enough before we met, had done a bunch of tryouts, kept saying no, 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 no. Eventually she got her foot on the door, was in NXT for a bit, but like wasn't quite she was there but not there. You know what I'm saying? Like she was
Yeah.
kind of there but not one of the stars. She even got like an action figure, but still it was like I bet people walking to Walmart like, who is that girl? You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like,
Sure.
how'd she get a figure? And then she got fired. And then her and I did some great stuff on the Independence and TNA. And then she got the call back. And I was like, you got to go back because you never really got that opportunity. You got to get that taste. You got to try it out. And I remember her first night back, it was the Royal Rumble. And, you know, this is her re debut. She enters the Royal Rumble and gets thrown right out. Anyone normally would be like, what? They're burying me on my debut. They're going to bitch and moan and have boo boo face. She recognized I could turn this into something. I made history at the Royal Rumble, and that's how her whole like Karen character began, just complaining and bitching, and it became entertaining. And then she realized like anytime she's on television, she has to make the most of it, whether it's a 10-minute match or a 2-second pre-tape where she's just in the background. You got to maximize your minutes. Like this is your time. So if you're gonna bitch and moan instead of capitalizing on opportunities, I think you're in the wrong business.
Maximize your moments. I love that. Like, maximize your time, because from the outside looking in, here's what I feel like she does: is she goes and does whatever she's doing on TV, and instead of going to the back and sitting and watching the screen, she's now saying, "How can I use the next hour, an hour and a half,
Yes.
backstage in an arena to now have the incredible backdrop of what I need for my social media videos?" And I wish so many talent, instead of sitting around and saying, how come I don't have any ideas? How come I'm not getting TV time? How come? Instead of just sitting there all day, come up with ideas. Because I'm sure that every idea she has hasn't worked, but the stuff that she does work, she just continues to do it. And to me, it's awesome.
Absolutely. And now with the, I keep saying this, the social media, like she doesn't need a writer to write something and then go up the chain of command to get it approved to be on SmackDown. She just put it on social media, and if it gets over, it gets over. And luckily she's gotten a lot of things over, including just becoming the United States champion. She didn't just like win the title as Chelsea Green U.S. champion. She's going to embrace all the America stuff, the red, white, blue. She's Canadian, for crying out loud. She's got the Statue of Liberty logo, like that's what made it so perfect. I told her, like, when you win this, you got to embrace, like when Booker T became King of the Ring, he wasn't just the King of the Ring, Booker T, he was King Booker.
King Booker.
I'm like, you need to embrace this, you need to make the title. Don't make the title make you. We've heard that so many times, and I think she's a perfect example of that.
You said that earlier in the interview that you have other talent comes up and ask you questions all the time. And I believe, as what I call a gatekeeper, when you've been in the business as long as you have, or myself, that it's our duty, no matter who we are, where we are, who we're talking to give that advice to, it may not even be a younger talent. It could be someone that just took longer to get in.
Right.
When you have a younger talent and you're looking at them, are you critical of them when they say, listen, you're not doing X, Y, and Z, or is it more just you're lifting them up?
So listen, this independent run is certainly not about giving back. It's not about passing the torch, about lighting a new one for myself, but I will help anybody, right? I will help anybody who asks, and I welcome people to ask questions. But like, for instance, I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus, but there's this talented kid who was, asked me for advice. I was telling him about social media. He says he posts. I said, give me your phone. He hadn't posted in 4 days. I said, bro, what are you doing? 4 days. That's not good enough. If nobody knows who you are, you got to post like 400 times a day. Not, you know what I'm saying? That's extreme. Not 4 days ago. You got to get yourself out there. But yeah, I will give anyone advice, whether it's right or wrong. I don't know, but I'll give them what I think is the right advice for sure. Because I want everyone to succeed.
Do you think, because it's not even that I struggle with it. I think just sometimes I wish during my first 10-year run, I missed one Monday night. And I missed a lot of things that I should have been at because I listened to Vince. And Vince, said, no, he's not a family member, so you can't go to that funeral.
Right.
And now as an older, human being, I'm like, what was I thinking?
Sure.
Do you think Vince ever would have allowed all of these house shows to come off the books, to have weekends off, to all the, you hear talent all the time now publicly say, man, I love the new schedule. But that wasn't the way you and I mean, it was 4 shows a week. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about the house shows is I feel like, yes, it was grueling, and like you're making those drives, what I'm saying? You're packing guys into a rental car and hotels to save money. But I will say those house shows, it kept me sharp, because that match on a Friday was okay. But then on Saturday, it was better. Sunday was even better. And then you're ready for TV Monday. You know what I'm saying? So like, even on the independents, if I take a weekend off, like I took last weekend off, I'm going to be a little rusty this weekend, so I couldn't imagine not doing house shows like on a normal, like regular basis. I couldn't imagine it.
It's crazy because, and even for me, who I would never put myself in the same category as you, but when I started working as a character, I then did house shows for 3 years so that I could figure out how to work without the television cameras being on. So there's always different reasons for doing the house shows, but man, did I love doing the house shows for that reason. And so now if you're a young talent and you're in AEW or whatever, what would your advice be if you don't have all of those house shows to do? How can you stay sharp?
Man, I guess if you're in AEW, you're allowed to take independent bookings. So if your schedule permits, take those independents.
No matter what.
Yeah, if you're in AEW, you could take independent bookings.
I guess I didn't even know that.
Yeah, so you can make even more money.
Wow, that's pretty cool, Tony Khan.
Yeah, it's great. So you can stay fresh, or if they're not using you on TV, you can go out there and try to reinvent yourself on the indies, which I think is really, really cool. Or at least stay busy and make money. Yeah, I don't know what I would do if I was in WWE and I didn't have those house shows. I guess find like a wrestling school or something. Because even that, like I feel like the reps only count if there's people there. You know what I'm saying? If you're just
Right,
listen,
right.
it definitely helps if you're doing drills and practice matches at school. Trust me, it definitely helps. But you're really learning with the people. Okay, this worked, this didn't work. I need to slow this down and to speed this up. You know, like the people, it makes everything. We all watched wrestling during COVID. Wasn't the same. I
Not even
certainly wrestled.
close.
I wrestled during COVID in those empty arenas. It is not the same.
What was that like? What was that like?
It's horrible. It's horrible. Every bump hurts. There's no adrenaline, right? And yeah, they were like piping in the crowd, but we don't hear that. We hear nothing. We hear ourselves like